We're seeing major tech hubs opening in Kenya, Rwanda, South Africa, and of course, some of the big tech startups of today, Lovable, 11 Labs.
In most scenarios, it has been proven that you cannot copy a Western solution in an emerging market because of the different levels of infrastructure. Let's say you want to build of all the data that is publicly available. I think Africa has like less than 2% that is publicly available, right? Which go and build in Africa, make Africa better and India better.
Welcome to TechNologia Talks, your one place where we break down the latest trends in technology and finance, where we dissect AI and economic strategy. Thank you for tuning in. We are your hosts, Elvis and Explicit.
Hi, I'm Explicit, the founder of Lennox, an AI tool that provides you with personalized education. If you're interested in basketball, it teaches you using that. You just go on Lennox, upload your document, and then it curates your content into your interests, teaching you using your interests. Yeah?
Yes. My name is Elvis. I'm the founder of Thoroughly, the first agentic bartering platform that allows cashless exchange of goods and services. Basically, the next Facebook marketplace where everything from search, negotiation, payment, and delivery is handled by agents. Thank you for tuning in today.
Oh, lovely. Thank you for the introduction. So today we're just going to be talking about building outside the US. That is building in Africa, building in India, or building in Europe, or wherever you are, but any environment which is not the US. Which brings to different business environments, because the business environment in US is kind of conducive for startups, and some environments might be a little bit trickier or harder. So we're just going to be talking about how to survive in those areas and some things that we have seen from people building around those areas. So, Elvis, can you tell our viewers why more people have been moving outside the US to build elsewhere outside the US?
Yes. I think it's obvious. We have artificial intelligence, which is the great leveler. And you no longer have to be in Silicon Valley or in these big major cities like New York or Houston to be a tech founder. We are here in Iowa and we're shipping products every day. And It's very exciting. And so, if you can do it in the Midwest, you can do it in Abu Dhabi, you can do it in Kenya or London. It doesn't matter where you are.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, so I think at some point, tech employers or employees were more concentrated around California, Silicon Valley, San Francisco, as you're mentioning. But now people are moving around elsewhere, even outside the US. And also, it also comes to the level of technologies in the US and compared to other countries, right?
Yes.
You see that most, or at least not all, but a lot of solutions have already been built for the US. So people have now been going to other countries to start building those solutions for those other countries so that they come to the same levels of like technology there.
Yep. We're seeing major tech hubs opening in Kenya, Rwanda, South Africa, and of course, some of the big tech startups of today. Lovable, 11 Labs are based off the UK and London. So it's not just something that we're talking about, like it's already happening out there. And
Yeah, that's lovely. So you mentioned that you've seen people moving to UK, going to Kenya and other areas. What are kind of like the growing areas that you have been seeing, and which are kind of like the most promising global markets right now?
Good question. Like you were saying, the US is advanced and they have the modern software infrastructure. We have Uber, DoorDash, and Africa, India. Those are emerging markets where such technologies don't exist yet, right? So it opens a big opportunity for founders to go back. I've seen a few good ideas from people who are doing this online. Uh, for instance, a startup recently raised, I think, 10 million. A Nigerian startup that's building and securing the airspace for Nigeria. So we're having
It's funny how I always know what you're about to say next.
No, you asked me for the ones I know. I'm telling you, I know
Okay.
people.
Okay. Can you tell us more about the startup that raised 10 million in Nigeria?
Yes. So two Nigerian founders recently raised a Series A to protect the Nigerian slash West African airspace. They're really a hot topic right now in TechCrunch, and they're building drones to protect African infrastructure. So imagine drones protecting dams, protecting schools in certain parts of Nigeria that have been known to have insecurity problems. And so yeah, this again the two things, right? We have AI that's leveling and making people able to build the tools that are needed to solve problems, and then we also have people that know that what opportunities to go for because these things need solving back home, like security.
Oh, that's great. So, to any builder from Africa watching this, just know it's possible to raise even outside Africa because Terra Industries
Yes.
raised outside Africa. They raised here in the US, was it right?
Yes.
Through HVC. So you can solve an actual problem in Africa and raise capital from somewhere else because one of the major constraints that comes to these emerging markets is like the capital allocation, right? Most people say that we are not building. Most people have great ideas and they say they are not building because they don't have enough money to make that come to life. So this is something that like more people should start looking into, not just raising within your country, even raising from the USA, the UK, or whatever venture capital that aligns with the values that you go along with.
Yes. Um, Something very important that the founders mentioned was for any emerging market like in Africa, don't think of solutions just such as maybe just an app to solve their problem. Think of bigger issues that involve infrastructure. So, like they did, they focused on security, but you can focus on transportation, you can focus on infrastructure. Yeah, something that's or medicine, healthcare. So, focus on big sectors.
Yeah, that's actually true because I think that point on infrastructure brings to people in emerging markets trying to copy and paste Western solutions. So in most scenarios, it has been proven that you cannot copy a Western solution in an emerging market because of the different levels of infrastructure. Let's say you want to build your Amazon, right? Here, the infrastructure is already set. The connections between one city or one state and another is already set up. So, if you're building in an emerging market, you have to look into that before even starting building the software. Otherwise, your probability of failure is going to be so huge if you don't look into those issues.
True, true. Um, Question: what are some common misconceptions about emerging markets?
Um, so emerging markets right now are highly correlated with emerging growing numbers, population. So in most scenarios, people think that growing numbers is equals to immediate demand, right? That's why we end up having people copying and pasting solutions from the West to the emerging markets, which won't work in some cases. So I think people have to go into more deeper research in terms of like whatever they're implementing to see is there actual demand outside these high populations, because like in marketing and economics, people usually just like assume that like it's a true assumption that higher populations are associated with higher demand, but products products here in the West and in emerging markets are totally different, and they need to be implemented in different ways.
Hmm. So you have to focus on product market fit, even in Africa. Don't just think having a population of 10 billion people is going to help you.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, because like um, it's like I've seen so many people trying to just like copy something that looks like WhatsApp and try to implement it in Africa. How are you going to move those people from WhatsApp, which they are using already? That's one thing, you know.
They love WhatsApp.
They love their WhatsApp. We love our WhatsApp, in fact. So you have to look into all those things before implementing anything. Do you have any common misconception from emerging markets that you know about?
No, I like the one you mentioned, copying and pasting.
Yeah.
I think that's a very common
Yeah.
misconception that's used. And also, you've mentioned people just assuming that the emerging population size, they always throw stats saying, oh, Uganda has the fastest growing population.
Yeah.
50% of the people are 20 years old.
Yeah.
So it's a very young market that's very tech
Savvy.
tech savvy, tech conscious. So it's definitely going to work. Just build and give it to them.
Yeah, that's true. And also the other one that we mentioned about like capital, I think since at the moment our capital structures aren't built for really supporting startups at the moment, I think people should start exploring even raising outside Africa, because I think one of the things that shouldn't limit you as a startup founder is the amount of capital that you have at that point. I think ways of raising is an important thing, but like it comes after building a prototype and a minimum viable product that you provide to people. Then you start focusing more on finding ways to raise. But yeah, and
True.
another
Conception.
misconception that is very common is you have to build your startup over a long time. If you're in tech, these days, one of the things that we've been talking about is quickly implementing whatever you're thinking about, quickly implementing it, give it in the hands of users and see how it goes, then build the full product after that.
True.
Yeah.
That's good. Move fast, break things. Yeah. Another misconception about Africa is that there's limited tech knowledge or labor to help build these tools, right? But we have so many startup hubs that are growing up in Kenya and Rwanda, and the governments too have been very open to technology.
Yeah.
Think of the president of Rwanda. He's been in talks to build data centers in Africa, which would be the first of its kind.
Nice.
And so, yeah. And also, another misconception is that it's expensive. When you think about a country like Uganda, where I'm from, we have one of the cheapest electricity rates. And so, with that energy, you can run, your data center. And then we have also solar power that helps. So, yeah.
Yeah, I know Strive Masiwa is already started working on a deal to build data centers in South Africa, which is really
Nice.
great. South Africa has also been one of the top players in like technology at the moment, and I'm looking towards seeing more people playing a bigger role in terms of improving technology in Africa.
Yep.
I know India is doing well as well in terms of they recently also released like their initiative or policy or like goals for their AI kind of policy.
Strategy.
Oh yeah, their strategy of how they're going to move with like AI going on forward.
Nice. I saw an article last night where the president of Rwanda attended this conference about nuclear energy and all the 46 countries in the world that have nuclear power, and how he emphasized the need for Africa to start its own nuclear facilities to create clean, fast, like cheaper energy.
Okay.
So imagine a nuclear powered center that's producing electricity. That's just gonna
Mm-hmm.
create more energy.
Yeah, I think all these improvements that is needed in emerging markets, right, rises. It brings the rise of the need of startups because startups really move fast and they get things really faster.
Yep.
Are way better than big companies because in big companies there is this structure of bureaucracy where you have to wait for this manager to approve this and they have to kind of really look into does it align with the company goals. But in startups, of course, they look into does it align into the company goals, but at the same time they really move fast and there isn't a big hierarchy that you have to go through to implement a solution.
There's limited red tape. It takes time,
Yeah.
less time, and also a big issue in Africa is you don't want to rely on the government to come solve your problems, right? So using startups as a way to, help the community is way better than relying on the government to come solve your problem. So yeah, you know your problems, you understand it deeply,
Mhm.
make a startup, make money, help your community. Um,
That's great. I think anyway, you don't want the government getting into these solutions because at the end of the day, it gives governments a lot of power, and governments should never be given a lot of power. At the end of the day, their power should be limited to some extent, which raises the importance of startups in Africa. At the end of the day, either way here.
True, true. So we're talking about startups and the misconceptions and how they should raise maybe outside Africa. But what are some opportunities that you've seen that are coming up in that people can like use to take advantage?
Oh, I think I've seen some people talking about drones and implementing AI within drones, especially in agriculture. Agriculture is one of the biggest sectors that we have in Africa, right? So, implementing those drones that can easily find diseases, easily inspect what's going on, knowing when to kind of like spray infection, like pesticides and other chemicals, that would definitely be great, and I think it will improve yields over time. So looking at towards like those areas.
That's a good one. One that I like is B2B in Africa. So business to business, where you're solving problems for another business and not just for direct to consumer. That could be building your startup that helps maybe the government. So you're doing tech consulting, or you're building a software that creates a database for a school, because the school is just going to focus on the students and teaching, right? But you build your startup that helps make the reports and other things for the school.
Yeah,
So B2B.
yeah, that's true. Even improving like the radioactive tools that they use to find where minerals are, because minerals is one of our great opportunities or one of our biggest contributor to most African economies, right?
Yep.
So improving those systems to easily find where minerals are and see how they can just improve that process. I think, especially considering that AI can be implemented in those things to improve those tools to actually take a lot of data and process it and see that, okay, with these characteristics, are we more likely to find some more minerals here? Because like I've had a lot of research that talks about like a lot of places where there are minerals, but they haven't been found yet because of the limited technology that we have.
True, true. Another good place is Fintech. Um, the ones that I've observed include payroll. So, for instance, building like a Gusto that helps maybe people in Africa pay their employees better.
Okay.
We need to think about things like retirement, building that infrastructure to help maybe a local person make sure they have a good retirement and they can see their savings and all these other
Yeah.
things. Because a lot of fintech in Africa focuses on mobile money, e-wallets, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Right. I do agree, especially when you talk about fintech being somewhat one of my fields, right? Um, we actually have a big issue of like copying and pasting as well.
Yep.
So, like, if you look at our loan systems, system to get a loan or system to do anything with banking, most of them are copied from the West and they were just like pasted as they are, as of which it's a different economy, different environments. We shouldn't be looking at the same characteristics to judge in terms of credibility of someone when we're implementing a financial technology, fintech in Africa, which brings a lot of a big need of like our own local data
Yep.
that is aligned to our culture.
Yep. I
Yep.
love that. I love that. Mm, one final example for fintech would be building a brokerage for financial assets, kind of like Robinhood, where maybe we can build the infrastructure to sell stocks and companies in Africa. I think that's an underserved market, in my opinion. I don't know if you being the expert, I don't know if you agree with this.
No, it's an area which is there's a lot of players. Um, we have the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. We have Zimbabwe Stock Exchange. We have a Kenyan Stock Exchange as well. Victoria Stock Exchange. We have a couple of stock exchange, right? But the major reason why I've seen a lot of people not getting into those is more like private players, is because of a lot of regulation around brokerage.
Mm,
And um, with our current state, I think we need to improve financial literacy across economies to start now calling out for private players. Because with government players, we know that consumers are mostly regulated, consumers are mostly protected. So I think we need to push financial literacy before we introduce like private players into those players to bring like Robin Hoods and things like that.
true, true. Another opportunity that I think of, given that you just mentioned that, we always talk about emerging population size in Africa, but we also forget that there's a lot of regulation when it comes to the different borders, you know? So someone's thinking of building this mobile app in Uganda, but they're only focused in like Uganda, but they aren't thinking about capturing the market in Sudan, in, you know, Zimbabwe. So again, just thinking about building $1 billion company that's borderless.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So, you know, like Africa, India, but okay, specifically on Africa here, is that they have good number of people, right? And a very growing market. But because the states are mostly separated, we no longer have like some free trading unions. It becomes harder to make something that will work in another country easily.
True.
So that disconnect also affects how our technology will be. Because like if you look at the US, right, it's a one whole big bunch of states, right? And then with the Fed playing the major role in terms of policing of like how business will be run across states, it becomes easier for expansion, for building big companies at the end of the day. I think that's the kind of nice position that India is also sitting on, which is probably going to be one of their economic advantages as they grow.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. Another big opportunity is um, if you're in America and you're thinking about moving to these emerging markets, you have the experience or just the American perspective that can help you bring those ideas into this emerging market. If the solutions you're bringing are non-existent in that market, but if you're in the emerging market, let's say if you're in Uganda, uh, you have an advantage because you might have the connections and the local context to understand the problems.
Yeah.
So that's very important. But also, you might know someone in government, or yeah, that can help you build this go to market. So
Yeah, the network effect would be important from the person who was locally there, and the exposure to the technologies from someone who's coming from a developed country as well. That would be a very good combination.
sure.
Yeah.
Another one is if you're a startup, uh, you're based off California, it could be very important to build an office in a place like Rwanda. First of all, it's a go-to-market strategy, right? You can cloud code can capture the African market, which is still not fully, captured.
Yeah.
But also, it can allow for experimentation. An example is you talked about drone technology.
Yeah.
I know Zipline, they're that famous drone delivery company.
Okay.
They have like an orange logo, and
I think I remember them. Yeah.
their story started off in Rwanda, where they were delivering blood for emergency healthcare.
Yeah.
And Rwanda has a lot of mountains and stuff, so it's very easy for them to use a drone to then go to a remote area and then drop the blood. And that's something they did in Rwanda for about 4 years
Oh, nice.
before coming back to the US. Now that they had a lot of time to build the technology, see it work, and also enjoy the cheap cost of building in Africa.
Mhm.
And then now they're in the US, and now all the investors are very happy, and yeah, because they've tried it out.
Okay. Wow, it's a good point. I just hate that to some extent. Did they continue in Africa? Because, like, you can just use our resources and then leave us dry. At least if you are leaving us, at least if you are continuing to implement such a solution in Africa, that would be great, because, it just feels like being used at the end of the day. But yeah.
And I hope they did.
Okay.
They did.
Yeah, it also brings to the nice thing about building there is that if you are building in a sensitive area and the amount of regulation that's there for some things, there is lack of regulations for things like drones, right? It gives you an opportunity to experiment around some things that might be way over regulated here in the West.
True.
So
True.
yeah, but those are some of the common opportunities or some of the major opportunities that are there that you could work on if you are building in Africa. But while we're talking about these solutions, it comes to that fact that we have been talking that copying and pasting is a very bad thing for emerging markets, right? There's the importance of local knowledge when you are building these solutions, right? I'll start with AI and the state of AI right now, right? Most of the data that is used by most of these models is data from the West, from the UK, from the US, from Europe mostly, right? Because I was just looking into it, and of all the data that is publicly available, I think Africa has less than 2% that is publicly available, right? Which makes us kind of behind in implementing these AI tools because they won't solve things that are really tailored to us. So, what are your thoughts around things like that?
Yeah, you cannot copy paste. A good piece of advice when it comes to building in emerging markets is you want to build the infrastructure as well. So, for instance, if you're building an Amazon in Africa, don't just build the website, right?
Yeah.
You might have to build the logistics, the delivery systems,
Yeah.
so even the roads, for instance, for some regions, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff that you have to think about, and having that local context helps. And yeah, be ready for that.
Yeah, that's so true. So I think it also comes back to actually applying the context of the data of like where you are, as he was mentioning that the roads, the system might be different from what you see in the US. But like one of my major things is that most of our data is manually collected in books and things like that and not automated. I think we need people who start pushing towards building our data and making our most of our data digital
Yeah.
so that it can be accessed, especially in this AI world. If we want to be a big player, if we want AI to actually help build a better Africa, we need all that data to be available. One of the things that I was thinking was even like languages, right? Right now, when you talk with an AI model in like Swahili or any other African language, right, or Shona, right, it uses translators to make those information, right? But there's that barrier of it going through a translation and then replying to you. It must be able to actually quickly respond to you the same way it does with English, right?
Yep.
So we need to internalize those tools, build that data so that give it context of like our culture, our problems, what we have built before, what we are proud of. If it has all that context, it would be easier going on forward for AI to be helpful. This, I think, raises the call for a lot of researchers in Africa, even the ones that are doing like small researches, to publish their data on the internet. And also to this also raises the opportunity for people who want to play around, like come to build something like a data bricks or a data company in Africa,
Yep.
to start working on things like that so that we have that data all compiled and later on we build our AI models that are for our problems.
That is beautiful. That's, yeah. Data breaks for Africa. You heard it from here. Now go work on it. Because back in Uganda, if you think about payroll,
Yeah.
I've seen my mom. They have a folk choir book, and it's just pages with rulers,
Yeah.
and they keep track of the name and then how much was paid. But there are no databases to hold all this data,
Yeah.
right? So that lack of data is a very big risk. Speaking of risks, what other risks have you seen when it comes to emerging markets?
Um, risk, the major risk that I always see is regulation, right? Most of the regulation that we are using is not conducive for startups, right? You want startups to be able to be more free.
True.
That's one thing. You also want to provide fluid taxation for startups, right? You want to make sure that startups can file for like the times that they had negative income when they have losses, so that they can claim that money back in the future. You want things like that. Those things like boost like innovation. They boost,
Yep.
they reduce the risk to a startup. And they, when you reduce the risk to the startup, it means that you have many players coming in playing around with like technology. And the other thing is our capital markets as well. We don't have a lot of people playing around. We don't have a lot of VCs providing money. There's a few, but not that many. We need a bunch of them to encourage a lot of people to get into these startups.
True. True. I like that. You mentioned regulation. Something that I think about too is politics,
Yeah.
where you might have your local member of parliament wanting a piece of the pie, and then there's that interference
Yeah.
where everyone wants to steal from your business, right? So you have to be protected. So that's a major challenge.
No,
But
that's a big one.
yeah,
I know it really affected Strive Masiwa, who has a telecoms company. He operates in Zimbabwe, South Africa, Kenya. If I'm not mistaken, he might be operating in Nigeria as well, but he operates in multiple African countries in terms of like telecommunications, and he was one of the early adopters of like telecommunications. So when he started his company, the government was trying to get some shares in there. So it just disrupted the way he operated this business. But he was able to come through it, and he was able to establish his product and without like the government interference after all. But it was a hard fight, and we don't have as much hard fighters out there who are willing to go throughout like those fights.
True.
You know, that's someone who is that innovative, right? We want them to be so welcomed, but he wasn't that welcomed that he hasn't been back to Zimbabwe, I think, for now more than 10 years.
Wow.
He's a Zimbabwean. He stays in the UK right now. He comes and have conversations with like people like Dave Manyika from Google, and you want to be able to attract those people to come back home. So he's building a data center, right? Because of all the things he knows, if you build it back in Zimbabwe with the current administration or current political sphere, it will be kind of catastrophic. Now he's building it in South Africa.
Wow.
You see, that's how you lose big players in technology. That's how we end up having everyone wanting to build outside Africa instead of Africa.
True. That being said, what is some advice that you might have for founders who are thinking of going back to India or Africa to build from there?
Who are there already or who are coming from here?
No, who might be listening and
Okay.
Yeah.
I think for anyone who's listening, you heard most of our advice that look into local context, right? Get into societies, start doing customer research, customer discovery, talk to people. I know it's more difficult to do customer discovery in Africa, in India, because of like how we mostly have people who might be judgmental. But if you really want to be a founder, people judging you is the least of your worries. Get judged, but get that data at the end of the day. Actually know the people's problems and move fast. Just try to build that problem as fast as possible.
True. I would advise to collaborate and build with them, because then you get their full attention and also the context that you need, right? For the problems that they'll be facing. And also, it's also cheaper the risks aren't that much,
Yep.
You can collaborate with them virtually. I've seen people who are doing research in agriculture with AI, and they get on calls on Teams or on Zoom once a week with a very big team that's in Kenya. And they too are very focused, mission aligned. And yeah, you can do it remotely, and you're collaborating and building fast. And yeah, you don't have to physically move to Kenya.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, but
That's a very good advice.
just take risks, initiative, and just start building.
Yeah, I think taking risks is the important thing. Even if your runway is 1,000, just put that 1,000, and if it goes, it goes.
It's a big conversion when you convert it to shillings. It'll do a lot.
Now, if you lose that 1,000, at least you did something that rather than having that 1,000 for the rest of your life.
True. There's so many success stories, most of them involve Americans that offshored to China, and Africa is the next wave. So you want to get on top of it. So don't miss out.
Yeah, play around with your African friends so that you connect for those opportunities.
Yep.
Go and build in Africa, make Africa better and India better, and other emerging markets as well.
Thank you so much. That was our episode on building in emerging markets. Thank you for tuning in.